What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode. Today is going to be very, very special because, as you might have noticed, it's been a while since we've been building a bike together. And that's because I feel that I kind of reached the amount of bikes that I wanted to own. I feel like I've ridden the bikes that I really wanted to ride. And I stopped hustling a little bit to get my hands on as many frames as possible, which was the case in the past. But from time to time, still, something very exciting catches my eye, and this is the case again now. Let me get you closer. You might know that I'm a big fan of the Standert brand, which is based here in Berlin, because back in the day I purchased one of their Triebwerk frames as well as their Pfadfinder frame. Two beautiful, fantastic steel frames that I really, really loved. I also convinced two of my friends to purchase a Kreissäge as well as another Pfadfinder as their main bikes. And we're frequently riding together, so I'm constantly looking at Standert bikes around me. And they recently released an update to their Kreissäge. Actually, their more sporty one, the Kreissäge RS. And this is what we're going to be building together today. And I'm also happy to report that this is a partnership with Standert. So they've been so kind to provide me with this frame in this beautiful pink, white, almost salmon looking paint job. I mean, I posted it on Instagram already, got a lot of love there already. And I'm also going to try to do a little bit of company profile with them once the sun comes out again and the imagery is going to look nice. So if you have any questions towards the brand or the people or the products, feel free to drop them down in the comments below as an inspiration for this upcoming episode. And just to give you an idea on why this frame seems so special or felt so special for me, and it is the material that it's built out of, because it is an aluminum frame. And so far I've mainly been riding titanium, steel, and now carbon again. Aluminum was one of my first bikes that I started out with, but that's been quite a while ago. And I think there might have been some progression in regards to how aluminum tubes are handled, how the design works, and so on and so forth. And also the first aluminum bike that I was riding was, very, very much on the budget side. So I'm very curious to see how a modern aluminum race bike is gonna feel like in comparison to titanium, steel, and carbon now as well. But I would say that is enough talking. Let's get right into building. Let's go. So let's kick things off as always with installing the brakes. So first of all, we start from the rear and we push the brake hose through the corresponding opening until it pops out in the bottom bracket area, where something like this little hex tool can come in very handy to fiddle out your brake hose and put it on the right path again. And then we just continue pushing it through until it pops out of the head tube. So we just pull it all the way through until we got the right length to mount the rear brake. And first of all, we're just going to use the corresponding bolts and just screw them in by hand before getting out our torque wrench. Our torque wrench actually only getting it out as a tool for now, because we're not torquing this to specification yet, because we want the brake to still be loose and be able to move around a little bit so we can properly center it later. Also, after installing the rear bolt, let's put in this little protection pin here, which kind of secures the rear bolt from slipping out, just in case it gets loose for whatever reason. Then we can move forward with the front brake and installing this, also just pushing the hose through the corresponding opening. And what I like about here is that everything is like properly molded into one path for the brake hose, so it just pops out up here without you having to kind of like fiddle it out somewhere from within the steerer tube. And like in the rear, we're now basically also just hand tightening the bolts, not to spec as I said yet, for the same reason, because we want the brake to move around so we can properly center it later. One thing that I learned from a previous build is to also like tape the brake hose to the tube here, so also that it doesn't like wobble around within the head tube and make some noise. So just quickly secured it here with some electrical tape. And then we're about to install the fork into the head tube. Before we do that, let's grease up all the contact points properly so we keep any moisture and water out of this area. Also down here on the crown race, we're gonna apply a nice thick layer of thick grease, and then we can install the bearing on top of it like that. Alright, and now I would say it's time to install it in the head tube. So we just push the brake hose through and insert the fork. Everything should come in nicely. Now it's important that you position your brake hoses in the right ways. And as I'm in Europe, I'm gonna have the front brake on my left hand side and the rear brake on my right hand side. Then we're going to insert the top bearing, and here we actually have a nice bearing that also has a top cover to also prevent getting water into that bearing area, which is quite nice. I think it's the first time that I'm seeing this. And then we're going to install this little ring, which on one hand is going to help center the fork in the bearing, and then also you have these openings here left and right, which are going to be holding the brake hoses in place for the integrated headset. Then we're going to install the headset cover. So also here we got an area dedicated for where the hoses need to go. And we just install this on top and push this in, should easily click into place. Now it's time for the handlebar, this beautiful polymer workshop handlebar. So for this, I'm going to be using my magnetic routing tool. So just this little wire that you can magnetically route through the tool by just using a magnet on the outside and guiding it to the openings. And here you'll see that very quickly and very easily it's possible to just pull this through. And then the other end we just install to the brake hose. It's just a screw in kind of installation, and that helps us to guide the brake hose a little bit easier through all those tight spaces within the handlebar. It's a little bit of a push and pull kind of interaction, but already very quickly with this tool you see that it pops out in the right area and we're able to pull the brake hose through. And then we're going to do exactly the same thing for the front brake. So we again just pull through and navigate through the magnetic routing tool. We're going to be installing it again in the brake hose by just screwing it in, and then we just push and pull it through into place. Sorry, along the way I also cut myself on the fingers. So if you see my bloody fingers here, it wasn't the best day setup wise, because just before this installation I also dropped one of my studio lights on my finger, so that's why my thumb is bleeding. And the other one is actually coming from the handlebar installation where I just cut myself on the brake hose. So sorry for that. So now I'm going to be installing a small spacer underneath the handlebars. I know I always slam my bars, but with these handlebars I feel that they're pointing a little bit further down than my other handlebars, so I'm giving them a little bit of height at least to add a little bit to ride comfort. Luckily this is a nice 2-split spacer, so it's easy to install it even after you installed the handlebars already and you've done all your routing. So you can also install more or remove it even afterwards without taking the whole headset apart. And then we're going to be installing this expander plug that also came with the frame. That's a very straightforward installation, just basically dropping it in and then tightening it with a hex key from the top. Then we're going to add the top cap, which is nicely designed that it properly integrates with this beautiful handlebar, and we're going to be tightening up that bolt a little bit from the top, basically compressing the whole headset area. Just make sure to not tighten it too much. You want your handlebars to still be able to freely move. And now it is time to install our shifters. So we're gonna start with the front one very quick. I mean, the nice thing on this handlebar is that you have all those markings on the handlebars, which makes it very easy to keep left and right on the same height. So I'm going pretty much to the maximum height wise. And then we gotta install the brake hoses. So what I always do is I always push a little bit of brake hose back into the handlebar just in case I cut it too short or I'll need to do some adjustment later on, that I have a little bit of buffer, and then I use this jag wire cutting tool to make a nice clean cut. Now we need two other components. One is called an olive and the other one is called the pin. You're going to see how they're assembled in a second. First of all, we have to insert the pin into the brake hose, and to make this a little bit easier, I always use this corkscrew to perfectly round off the opening of the brake hose that was just freshly cut. That just makes it a little bit easier to insert the pin. So first of all, I'll just push it in by force with my hand, but then afterwards I'm going to use another jag wire tool to actually push this pin in, so you're clamping down on the hose, and then this little bolt is slowly but surely pushing in the pin into the brake hose, giving it a proper and clean metal endpoint to then later insert into the shifters, as you see here. Now we're going to take out that bolt from the shifter, so that was just there, that no oil is going to be leaking out because there's still oil in those shifters. We're going to take that plug out, we're going to insert that so-called nut on top of the brake hose. Then comes this little olive that I was mentioning already before, we're going to insert that. And here it's going to be important to enter the brake at a proper angle so everything goes in straight. And to make things a little bit easier, what I'm doing here now is I'm taking off the shifter completely from its clamp, and that allows me to very easily install the brake hose into it and tighten it up. Also, when you're tightening up this nut here, what's happening underneath is basically the olive is being crushed, creating an airtight seal, and now no more oil can leak out. What is important here to not tighten that bolt too much because it is a metal on plastic interface, so watch out that you don't crack your shifter while doing that. And then it is already time to do a quick bleed. Nothing that I really love, but it is something that you need just to be safe on the road and have proper braking power. Because I think we agree that braking from time to time is actually quite important and comes in quite handy. So we install this syringe, and then on the shifter we just pull out the little bolt and install our little funnel that's going to be holding the braking fluid once we're pushing it through the system with the syringe. So now we basically just open the bleed port, we push the oil through, and you already see that up here in the shifter it is coming out nicely. So a pretty straightforward process. I'm moving the shifter a little bit, knocking against the frame and the handlebar just to get some of those bubbles maybe moving more towards the shifter so that I'm able to like push all of them out. And then I'm closing the bleed port, and make sure to clean things up. I mean, here it might have been smarter to remove the brake pads while doing that, because you've seen a little bit of overspray of oil and you definitely want to keep it away from your brake pads. Then we're going to be doing the same thing on the front, and here you see you really want to make sure that there are no more bubbles coming up when you're pushing the braking fluid through the system with the syringe. So once that's the case, you can install the bolt back. Just make sure that it's really only finger tight here, clean everything up, and then we can already move forward to routing some Di2 cables. So first we're going to be routing the Di2 cable for the front derailleur, basically just pushing it through the frame until it pops up at the top, and then we continue with the Di2 cable for the rear derailleur, pushing it through here through the chainstay, waiting until it pops out in the bottom bracket area. We pull it out a little bit and then we navigate it also back up down the C-tube until it pops up here as well. Next, we're going to be connecting those Di2 cables to the battery, and most of the time there are those mounts that hold around the battery so that you can push them properly into your seat post, but I actually don't have that flying around, so I'm just putting it back into the bubble wrap that it shipped with, and I tape it with some electrical tape, and this way you also get a lot of resistance that it holds the battery nicely in place. So I mean, I've been doing this on a lot of bikes in the past, and it always worked well for me. So also here you see that it's installed quite tightly. So now it is time to just click in those Di2 cables front and rear, and then we can already install the seat post and put it into place. Then it is time to install the rear derailleur. Of course, first of all, let's put some grease onto the threads here, but then we can directly install the rear derailleur. Very, very straightforward job. So you basically just install and tighten this one bolt up here, and then you can already move forward to the front derailleur. But as you see, there is no spot to install a front derailleur here. So just in case you want to run a 1x setup, you can have a very clean and nicely looking setup here, but I'm using this carbon clamp for a front derailleur. You basically just clip it around the C-tube, and then you have your spot to install your front derailleur. Just one bolt, very quick installation. We're not tightening up to spec yet because we'll have to move the position once we have installed the crankset. So then we push the remaining Di2 cable back into the frame and install the Di2 cable, and then we just install this little grommet here to keep the water out of the frame, and also to make it look a little bit nicer. Then very similar thing on the rear derailleur, we just install the Di2 cable, put this little cover on top of it, and then we also install a grommet back here on the chainstay to have a nice and clean setup again. Next up is gonna be the bottom bracket and the cranksets. So again, we put a nice layer of grease on the threads just to keep water out, and then we install the bottom bracket. Here, very important, it should be possible to basically just screw it in almost all the way by hand. This means that you're not cross-threading anything, and then you add your tool and you torque it up to, I think, 40 Newton meters, which actually just means quite tight. Same thing on the other side, again applying a bunch of grease. Also just make sure that your brake hose is running underneath the bottom bracket, and yeah, then again just installing it, tightening it to 40 Newton meters, and you're good to go. For the crankset, I'm using this beautiful Dereileurs X310, so this is even lighter than Dereileurs one. Here again you grease it up nicely. For the same reasons, keep water up, keep everything nice and smooth. This one you install from the non-drive side, and then on this side you see that I have the crank arms installed with some nice Dereileurs chain rings, which perfectly fit on here, so making it a very, very light setup. And installation wise, it is, I think, very similar to like how you install a SRAM crankset. You just basically attach it now through the spindle from the drive side. So now we can position the front derailleur better, and what you're looking for here is that you want the cage to be 1 to 2 millimeters sitting above the outer teeth, and also just make sure that it's really parallel to the chain rings as well, so that you have proper and smooth shifting in the front. All right, so I think that closes that chapter. Now it is time to already install some wheels to make it look like a proper bike. Here for this build I've chosen to go with the Xentis Hi-X SL wheels, because these are just my favorite wheels, and I think that they're going to be looking and riding great on this bike. So let's quickly just install the front and rear, and then we can already move forward to installing a chain. So I'm using a chain from a previous build here, hoping that it is already going to be the right length, but I see here that it is almost right. It is just 2 links too long, so let's quickly get the chain breaker out and remove 2 of those links. That's also a very, very straightforward process, and then we can put in our quick links and then also lock them in with this nice lock tool. So just inserting it here, pulling it apart until you hear the click, and then you're good to go. What I really like with the Shimano setups, so even though this group set is coming from another bike, also already here without any adjustments, you see that the shifting already works perfectly and very, very smooth. So yeah, I'm just a big Shimano fan. I mean, I was riding SRAM as well at some point, also wasn't bad, but if I have to make a choice, Shimano is the way to go for me. Now we're moving to final touches, so let's install this carbon saddle here. I mean, it doesn't really look comfortable, but it is one of the most comfortable saddles that I'm running, I think, on all my bikes by now. And I also like this clamp design that the Polymer Workshop seat post has here. So you have one bolt in the front, which you use to adjust the angle, and then you use the rear bolt to basically just tighten everything up and lock it in place. Talking more finishing touches, let's get some nice lightweight bottle cages up on here as well, and then installing those, which I took from one of my other bikes, because I think that this this classic design really looks well with a metal tubed frame. And now going to bar tape. If you've seen my other videos, you know how much I dislike wrapping bar tape, so I'm not going to show you the whole process here because I'm just not great at wrapping bar tape. So here's the start, and here's how it ended. I think it actually turned out quite all right. We do the same thing on the other side as well, but I'm not going to be the person who's going to teach you how to wrap bar tape, because I'm still relearning it every time I build a bike. So yeah, YouTube is your friend here. So now just let's quickly align the handlebars to the wheel, that everything is nice and straight. And then the last action that we have to do here is to tighten up the bolts on the handlebars so that everything is nice and safe. And with that, the build is actually done. So that was a fun build, quite smooth, I would say, overall. One afternoon and one evening on the weekend, and I was done. Now I would say it is time to weigh it and to see how heavy or how light it actually is. With this, just to sum up again, Ultegra group set with the Dereileurs X310 carbon crankset with some Dereileurs chain rings, the Xentis Hi-X SL wheels, and then also the frame came with the finishing kit from Polymer Workshop, so with their polymer handlebar and the polymer seat post. So I'd say enough talking. Let's put it on the scale. Let's hang it in. And we're coming in at, let me get you close. We're coming in at 7.20 kilograms. So 7.2, I'm very happy about that. Now it is going to be time to actually test ride that bike. First, I'm going to put it on the indoor trainer today to get my bike fit dialed in a little bit. And then I'm just going to wait for at least a little bit of sun outside, or at least dry roads here in Berlin, because at the moment it's not super pretty. But I can't wait to ride this one, because I think paint job wise and also design wise, it just looks beautiful. I mean, that's also one main thing that Standert is known for. And yeah, together paired with those wheels, I think it is quite an eye catcher. So very, very excited for this. This is going to be another episode in the future where I do a proper ride review of this whole bike and this whole setup. And like I said in the beginning, if you have any questions on what you'd like to find out about Standert, the brand, the people behind it, feel free to drop it down in the comments below, because I'll also try to follow up with a little brand profile, as they're kind of my neighbors. So if you enjoyed this episode, consider hitting that like button. Also consider subscribing if you're not a subscriber yet. And with that, as always, I say thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.